Welcome back, Tiger fans, to the Rock M Radio's football podcast before the box score. I'm Nathan Hurst. Nate is currently transporting heavy objects from one location to another. So while he's busy blowing out his back, we'll be joined instead today by Rock M Nation Deputy Manager Josh Matica. Josh, how's your summer going so far?
It's going good, man. Lots of time at the pool, lots of time in the yard, lots of time not moving heavy objects from one place to another. So I think my summer's going better than Nate's, all things considered.
Well, that's great news. The pool is the place to be these days, and hope for the next couple months at least. We've got to get out there ourselves. So hopefully, we'll do that this weekend on Father's Day. Father's Day pool weekend sounds pretty good to me. So this week or this 2 week period, but between the last time we recorded and today, we're recording on Thursday, June 12th. For those who may be listening a little later in the summer. Mizzou has added 2 more high school recruits to their list of high school commitments, which is always good news. The first recruit they received last week, Jabari Brady, a 4-star wide receiver commit from Pompano Beach, Florida. And so Jabari Brady the Tigers beat out some serious contention for this kid. 4-star talented receiver. Alabama had an offer, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Miami. Just about everybody you can think of that would want a highly rated receiver in Florida had offered him. Yet Mizzou won out. So that's yet again another big-time win for Jacob Peeler and the Tiger recruiting efforts down in Florida. Now, Josh, I know you wrote a little bit about Brady when his commitment first was announced. What do you think about his fit on the roster next year?
Well, I mean, the fit on the roster, as anybody who has spent any time watching football, especially Drinkwitz football, knows that freshman receivers generally are not going to see the field a ton. I do feel like, and I mentioned this in my piece, I feel like every year we get one kind of surprise person who gets a few snaps. I mean, last year or 2 years ago, it was Marquise Johnson, and we know kind of where he fits on the roster now. So I would say there's always a chance that Brady pops and becomes that guy. I mean, obviously he's got a high level of talent. I'll say this, he kind of doesn't fit, at least based on the tape that I've seen, doesn't necessarily fit the mold of the types of receivers that we've really seen succeed at Mizzou thus far. We know that Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore like their receivers to be a lot of times they're in action, they're really gadgety, they can do a lot of different things on the field. Jabari Brady is he's not slow, but he's not a burner on the outside. He is a tall guy, tall and stocky, at least depending on what recruiting service you read and believe his measurables. He's a high point guy. He goes to the point of catch. He's really good there. He's an end zone target. I'm really curious to kind of see where he fits on the roster, because even Theo Weiss, as the end zone guy the last few years, hasn't really been a traditional, put it up in the air and let him go get it type of guy. So do I think he's going to pop right away? Probably not. Generally, those guys, I feel like they need a little bit of adjustment to the game. But certainly, it's an exciting ad, and we know that the staff has had a lot of success recruiting and developing receivers in the last few years. So it's always good to get a blue chip receiver in the fold.
Absolutely, especially one from such a hotbed as Florida, kind of maintaining that pipeline from down there, which Jacob Peeler has really done a great job of in the last few years. One thing I noticed, so as you said, he's not the fastest guy, but he's got a pretty big frame. I mean, he's 6'2", 6'3", depending on where you look. I'm wondering, based on a couple other recent commitments that this staff has gotten and brought in, I'm thinking Donovan Olubade, also from Florida. I'm thinking even he's no longer with the team, but Courtney Crutchfield, a little taller of a receiver. I'm wondering if they're trying to look more in that direction, where they started with the smaller guys. Maybe that's who they were able to get. Talented smaller guys, your Mookie Coopers, your Marquise Johnsons, and slowly are trying to, as they can acquire larger receivers, work that way. Now, Olubade is a different receiver. I don't think he's got probably a step faster than Brady maybe, but they're both kind of bigger frame guys. So it could just be a coincidence. They're both two guys that I'm starting to think of maybe they're at least not going all for big, but having the range of your small guys, your Sean Terrys, who very small, quick guy, gadgety guy. I don't think Brady's much of a gadget guy. He's like put it on the outside, put him on the outside, send him deep, or send him over the middle and get some catches through contact. So it'll be nice to see that type of a player added to the mix come 2026 for sure. Second, shortly after Jabari Brady announced, I think the very next day, maybe it was a 2-day break. I'm not sure. The Tigers got another commitment that comes from Isaac Jensen, tight end from Omaha, Nebraska. Jensen's a 3-star tight end, 6'6", 230. So this is a really big kid. Another player with an impressive offer list. Seems like Mizzou beat out Nebraska was the top contender there for his services. Doesn't surprise anybody being from Omaha himself, but Auburn had an offer out, LSU, Wisconsin, Colorado, Notre Dame, and you know how Notre Dame turns out their tight ends. So another guy that a lot of folks wanted, and Mizzou got his services. Really big frame. What do you think about the Tiger use of tight ends under Eli Drinkwitz? It's been sparse at best. So what do you think he might be able to add to what they've already got going?
Yeah, I mean, I think with tight ends, what we've seen thus far is it seems to me there seems to be a trend that Drinkwitz likes to get his tight end in early, and really kind of sell them on kind of what the pitch is. And then Missouri has a pretty notable list of tight ends in its past. So like be the next this guy. So what he does is he looks for pass catchers. He looks for big, tall guys. And I think he just waits for talent to pop. I think Brett Norfleet has been the best example of that. And I think it's really unfortunate that he's been hurt so often. I think his profile would be a lot larger if he'd been able to stay on the field a little bit more. And then, I mean, you need a guy that can block with as much as Mizzou runs the ball. I think probably tight end has been one of the least impressive elements of the Drinkwitz offense thus far, just because we haven't seen anybody really make their mark on the position in his time. Jensen's a good get. I was impressed they got him from Iowa State. I know Iowa State was on him. His high school quarterback has committed there. So like you said, it's good to get big guys in. I mean, with high 3-star guys, I just read an article on The Athletic the other day, kind of re-emphasizing the thing that we always know is that blue chip recruits tend to be the most successful in the long term. So, I mean, certainly as we're going to talk about soon, the amount of scholarships going up, you see a guy with a big frame that can fill it out, who is already a talented pass catcher, probably put some weight on him, turn him into a good blocker. It's a risk worth taking for sure. So I think he's a good addition to the class.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Drinkwitz likes his big, tall tight ends. I'm going to read out the heights of the tight ends that are currently on the roster for Mizzou. So Isaac Jensen, commitment, not on the roster yet, but he's there, 6'6", 230. Then down the line, we have 6'5", 6'6", 6'4", 6'6". Shrimpy Jude James at 6'2", then another 6'5", and then we've got Dakota Terrell at 6'8". So that averages out, if my math is correct, to about 6'5.5" as the average height of the tight end across now 8 tight ends that Drinkwitz has brought in. So he likes his tall guys. You would think that he would use them more in the red zone, seeing as how they're always going to be taller than anybody trying to defend them, and maybe we'll see that more in the coming years as they got Brett Norfleet and soon to have Jensen, the transfer from Iowa this past year as well, who's 6'6" in his own right. So
maybe that's why Ryan Horskamp never took off, because he was only 6'2".
That's probably it. That's why that must be why they never let him really see the field once Norfleet got on here, as he's just not tall enough at all. And that we'll see. It would be great. I would love to see a red zone lineup of 4 tight ends. You get your 6'6" Norfleet, you get your 6'8" Dakota Terrell, you get your 6'5" Vince Brown, and your 6'4" Jordan Harris. Run them all out into the end zone, just throw the ball up, Hail Mary style. Who can stop that? Find a secondary who can who could come down with the ball, and you got all 4 of those guys jumping up front.
Well, and we joke about height, but seriously, I think if Mizzou can finally end up with one of these big old tight ends that can go up and get the ball in the end zone, I mean, we're just talking about them starting to maybe prioritize some of these taller receivers as opposed to these gadgety guys. With as much as Mizzou runs the ball, having a threat over the top in the end zone, I think, would be a huge boon to this offense that it feels like year over year, we're just more and more prioritizing the run. So I don't think it's a bad strategy and continued strategy to just like find guys that already have that ability to go up and get the ball and hope that you can translate that talent into an SEC level. So I'm all for it. Like I'm okay with getting the big stretchy guys and letting them try to work it out on the field.
Especially when you can if you can run the ball well, run the play action, then that's going to limit the number of linebackers and safeties that are covering these really big guys, because they're going to bite down on and be forced to bite down on the run. Then you've got a 6'6" tight end running down the field being guarded by a much shorter cornerback or nickelback for that matter. Very difficult to defend. So hopefully, Eli, if you're listening to this, Kirby, if you're listening to this, let's get the ball to our tight ends. That'd be a great thing to do. Moving on, some more bit of news broke since we last recorded. And this is something that isn't a surprise, and it's been ongoing now for actually more than a year since the first details leaked out. But the House settlement, which is the big lawsuit that is bringing about pay for play to college athletics, it has officially been approved by the judge. It's now active. As we sit here and speak this evening, schools are now allowed to pay players directly. And then the final tally, at least for this number, is going to go up incrementally every year for the next 10 years. Schools are allowed to now pay their athletes up to $20.5 million per year. That's across all sports. It is to their discretion how they want to divvy that money up. If they want to divvy that money up, they may decide they don't want to pay that much money. They could pay anywhere. They could pay $0. They could pay up to $20 million. Mizzou has pretty much come out and said they're going to maximize the amount of spending that they can in terms of revenue sharing to the $20.5 million. The other thing that affects football, on top of the fact that most of this money, if we're going to be real, the vast majority of this money is going to go to the football roster. It also increases the roster size of scholarships to 105. That actually is a decrease of total roster size because there's no longer walk-on. So gone are the days of rosters of 100 where you've got your 85 scholarship players and then another 40-ish walk-ons that are kind of practice fodder and just get beat up on every day during practice, never see the field. Those days are gone. But you can have up to 105 scholarship players, which is an increase of 20. So, it's a better in some ways, not as good for some of the walk-on athletes that want to participate in other ways. But it's definitely a huge, huge change to college athletics across the board. Josh, how do you see this now that it's real? And we've known about it for a while, but now that it's real, now that's the thing that Mizzou is doing. Laird Beach just today had a press conference basically reiterating that Mizzou will be paying out $20 million to their athletes. How is this going to affect Mizzou football moving forward? Is this going to be something where we're not going to see a huge effect because we're just going to be doing what everyone else is doing? Is it going to change how the program operates? What do you think?
Well, certainly it's going to change how the program operates, right? I think the general consensus that everybody is agreeing to is that, yes, this is unprecedented, but also nobody kind of knows what exactly it means yet. I mean, it's such a huge shift. We're looking at basically the end of amateurism, which has been what the sport has been built on for forever, at least as far as we understand it. So it's certainly going to change some things. The things that I'm really interested in, and I think will vary from school to school, and I think will, depending on how much information we get out of Mizzou, I guess is to be determined. But what kind of contracts are we going to be looking at? Because I know one of the big things that the settlement comes with is that schools are now allowed to sign players to essentially multi-year contracts. So I imagine that some schools, the schools with a lot of money that are able to utilize third-party NIL money through NIL Go, which is a whole other part of this deal, they're going to have a ton of they're just going to be able to sign like their I guess maybe like their 40 or 50 best players to multi-year contracts. And so you're going to have a lot of like top-heavy schools not losing their best players, kind of like what we saw with Georgia losing its quarterback this last year. With Mizzou not having as much money, I mean, they have that budgeted money that everybody else has, but depending on how much money they can get through third party deals, do you look to prioritize like your top guys and say, we're going to keep our 5 to 10 best players, we're going to put them on multi-year deals because that's what's going to be the bedrock of our team? Are they going to spread that money out a little bit more? I think that's just going to be something that Laird Beach and Eli Drinkwitz have to navigate. And obviously you want the money continuing to come in through these other deals. And part of what's happening with this NIL Go, which is like this third party, algorithm that is going to evaluate NIL deals and whether or not they're legitimate or not. I don't think Mizzou has been, at least from what I can tell, Mizzou hasn't been doing a lot of these kind of like under the table, yeah, it's an NIL deal, but it's not so I don't think that they're going to be in much trouble with that in terms of losing those deals. But I think it's just going to be up to the strategy of how they deal with those contracts, because ultimately it comes down to do you keep a Luther Burden around for 3 years at, let's say, like $1.5 million a year? Or do you say, hey, we're going to spend $750,000 a year on 2 guys who may not be good as Luther Burden, but you're getting 2 for the price of 1, essentially. So it's just going to be a game of calculus that Drinkwitz and Veach are going to have to figure it out. And they're going to have to pay attention to what other schools are doing too, because schools like Texas, Alabama, Georgia, especially in the SEC, those schools are only getting richer with this type of money that's getting guaranteed to them now. So I think it's judgment is being withheld thus far. Certainly it's going to change a lot of things. And the contract element of it is the one that I'm the most interested in.
For sure. The idea of contracts is appealing to me in the sense that it could potentially bring some stability year to year between programs. Right now, the transfer portal is great in one aspect, in that it allows athletes who aren't getting an opportunity in one place to go somewhere where they may get an opportunity. That's great. But at the same time, I think in the long term is bad for the health of college athletics if you have this kind of massive roster turnover that you're seeing year in and year out, that we've been seeing for the last 5 years, where you could show up day one of your team's football season in September, and if you weren't paying attention over the offseason, there could be 40 new players on the team that are on the field at any given, throughout the game that you've never heard of before. And then you wonder where half the team that was on the team last year, where did they go? So that's hard. It's hard for fans, especially casual fans, who are trying to get, latched on to a team, start rooting for a team. Hard to do that. So I like the idea of contracts. I'm just a little dubious. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a little dubious that a contract wouldn't, not that it would be broken, but that a school wouldn't, if a player really wanted to leave, wouldn't kind of be pressured to release them from the contract anyway. We saw this exact same thing toward the end of the pre-transfer portal era, when when athletes were still signing letters of intent, and they were locked into those. And it was when athletes had to sit out a year to transfer, and they also had to get the school's approval to let them leave. They couldn't technically even leave until the school gave them the okay. But it became such a thing that so many athletes were transferring. If a school decided they weren't going to sign off on them leaving, it became a really bad look for those schools. And then ultimately, every school pretty much let everybody go, and then it kind of got transformed into the transfer portal. I'm not sure that it's not going to work the same way, regardless of whether they have a legal contract on the books or not. Where if a player said, "Look, my mom's sick, I really want to move back home, closer to my family, to help with that," or whatever it may be. They could have a contract that could legally bind them, but would it still be a really bad look if they didn't let them out of that to go move on for whatever reason may be? There could still be a lot of pressure there, and then that could limit their recruiting prospects down the road, and that's really where it matters for these schools. Not necessarily to look bad in the face of it, but it's a lot harder to sign the next athlete coming up if it's obvious that if something happens and they want to leave, they're not going to be able to do so. So, without a collective bargaining and some larger agreement that everyone signs in on, I'm not really sure how binding these contracts ultimately will be. But
yeah,
I want to see what happens. It could, hopefully they work. Hopefully it works well, because I think it could be the best solution for everybody. I'm just not sure if that's going to play out that way.
Yeah, and that raises an interesting point too. Is that I think a lot of what we see in the transfer portal is it gives. I think it almost offers an opportunity for players and schools to have an amicable split if things maybe haven't worked out the way that everybody planned. I won't name names, although I think Mizzou fans might be able to infer. I mean, there was a pretty notable transfer out of Mizzou this past offseason. There were rumors for everybody who was paying attention to the program that maybe this player and the coaching staff didn't get along, or maybe there were some effort concerns and that playing time didn't equal out. And then this player ended up going to a different program. That's the kind of stuff that it stays in-house for the most part. And you do kind of just speak about it in generalities and rumors. Whereas if you get that player to sign a contract and something like that happens, okay, in an effort to get this contract off the books, does there have to be some kind of violation on one side or the other? Does that bring about a potential legal action on someone's part? It might be just easier for schools to like negate that, or kind of like you said, allow that player to leave. But that's going to be harder when you put, digital ink to digital paper. So I don't know. It's kind of like what I said earlier. It's to be determined. And I think anybody who is looking at the house settlement and saying, oh, this is going to like clean things up, it's not going to be as messy, it's not going to be as chaotic as the transfer portal, well, maybe like 5 years down the road when we've kind of figured this out a little bit more. But I do wonder if in these next 2-3-ish years, we're going to see some hiccups and maybe some potentially messy situations kind of unfolding as players and schools kind of navigate this new world. You just hope it's not at a place like Mizzou, because, we like Mizzou and we want everybody to get along and we want all the contracts to be signed and we want our football team to be good.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that contracts also does allow, even if there is a decision to part ways for whatever reason, if you have some language written in, buyout language that said, okay, you're free to leave wherever you go, and it has to pay us X amount of dollars to release you from that contract, kind of buy you out of that contract. That's a solution too. I mean, it feels a little icky, honestly, to have, to force a perhaps even a smaller program to pay Mizzou, $50,000 to $100,000 for the services of their athlete who signed a contract with Mizzou. That feels weird. If they wanted to go to Georgia, by all means, Georgia, roll out the checkbook and pay us up. But it could get messy is the right word. It could get messy. It could get contentious, at least until everybody seems to figure out the water rises to the level and figure out, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how it works. It might take longer than 5 years, to be honest. This deal lasts for 10 full years. And then after that, I'm really not even sure. I don't know where it goes after that. Hopefully by that point, there'll either be some, federal legislation in place, or, God forbid, collective bargaining in place that really solidifies something. But we'll see. That 10 years is a long time from now. That's something for future Josh and future Nathan to opine about in 2035. So moving on to talk about actual football on the field. Today, the bulk of today, we wanted to go through and talk about each position group on the roster and kind of walk through if we're buying that group, if we're selling that group, or if we're just going to hold on that group. And to me,
I'm glad you clarified that. We hadn't talked about holding. So go ahead and explain that.
So to me, a hold means I don't have enough information. I'm not buying more stock. I'm not selling my stock. I'm just going to sit on what I've got. I need to see a few weeks of this unit in action to make a final decision. And if I'm buying the unit, then that means that I'm all in on them. I think they're going to be great. They're going to be a key part of this team winning. If I'm selling it, that means I think it might be a weakness of the team. It's might be an area where we could see some hiccups as the season plays out. So we're going to start right up at the top at quarterback. The Tigers coming into the season lose Brady Cook, Drew Pine, J.R. Blood, Aiden Glover. They're keeping Sam Horn on the roster as well as a couple of walk-ons. So it's not unclear because they can no longer be walk-ons. It's unclear if they're going to stay on as scholarship players or not. We'll find that out, I guess. But they're keeping Sam Horn, and then the quarterbacks are gaining Bo Perbula and Matt Zollers. All right. Josh, where are you buying, selling, holding the quarterback position?
So I'll start positively. I'm actually going to buy the quarterback. I'm going to buy some stock on the quarterback room this year. And I think as of maybe a week ago, this would have been a hold, but over on Rock M Plus, one of our subscribers started a thread that was basically like, how do you feel confidence wise on a 1 to 10 scale? 5 to 6 being, I'm not exactly sure, 7 to 10 being, I'm pretty confident. That the QB situation is going to work out. He was basically like, name each quarterback that has a reasonable chance of playing and give them a confidence rating. And I was like, well, I thought that was a good opportunity to go back into Bo Pribula's numbers of the last few years. And one thing that I didn't realize about Pribula is he's obviously a pretty decorated runner. A lot of design runs for him over at Penn State. His passing numbers in admittedly a very, very small sample size were elite level. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I know it was above a 92 passing score from Pro Football Focus. And, it's not like those guys are just guessing. He did throw 9 touchdowns to 1 interception in his time at Penn State. Obviously, I think it was 55 pass attempts, so we're not working off of a big sample size here. But I think there's enough with Pribula to show that we know he can run the ball, and he can run it effectively against high-level defenses. We know he is accurate, and we know that he is at least a good decision maker. So the arm strength to me is still maybe a question, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem with Mizzou's receiver room, which we'll get to. I'm actually fairly confident. I feel like the more that I read about Pribula, the more I look into his numbers, the more I feel like he's going to do a really good job. I don't know that his numbers are going to look amazing based on what you might think a SEC quarterback's numbers should look like, but I feel like the staff did a really good job identifying a guy that they thought would work well in the system and will perform well when he gets here. After Pribula, I don't know how much confidence. Maybe I would hold the rest of the QB room, but based on Pribula's track record alone and the fact that I think he'll translate well, I'm going to buy the QB room.
That's great. Great points about Pribula. I was a big fan of them signing him. I think he's a great ad, and I agree with you that he will fit into the system that they seem like they want to run. I'm going to hold, though, at this point, just solely because the sample size, as you said, is low. Most of his snaps were in garbage time. He did have some high leverage snaps last year, but the majority of his success, of his touchdowns, were not necessarily against the first teamers or the games are already out of hand. So do I think he can perform well for the Tigers? Yeah, absolutely, I do. But I need to see it first. So I'm gonna stay conservative. I'm gonna hold. That doesn't mean I'm super down on him or the unit as a whole. I just need to see a little bit more first. So as Sam Horn goes, he's kind of in the same book. When he's been on the field for the 10 snaps or whatever that may be, his arm looks great. He seems like he's a good athlete. Haven't seen anything beyond that. And Matt Zollers is we'll get to him in a couple of years, hopefully, if he's still around. So, I'm holding on the quarterbacks. Moving on to running back, the Tigers lose Nate Noel, lose Marcus Carroll, lose Kawan Lacey, keep Jamal Roberts and Tavoris Jones, gain Ahmad Hardy, and then freshman Marquise Davis and Brendan Haygood. I'll start on this one. I'm buying the running back room. I think the ceiling of this unit as a whole is higher than just about any year that Drinkwitz has been on staff in terms of not only the talent, but also the depth of that talent. Noel and Carroll, there was a good 1-2 punch there last year. Um, Noel had talent. I'm not. Carroll was a very solid college football player, but his ceiling just wasn't really that high. I'm really high on Ahmad Hardy. I think he has a monster high ceiling. I think he could be the leading rusher in the SEC next year if everything goes according to plan. Super talented. Jamal Roberts has established himself as a very solid SEC level running back. He can handle a workload. He's not going to carry the ball 25 times a game, but he doesn't need to. But he can give you 15 carries. He can also come in on third downs to be a great pass protector. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Marquise Davis. This is the guy I'm also almost as high on as Ahmad Hardy. Really big last second commitment at the right before signing day. Kind of stole him away from Kentucky. 4-star running back. He's going to see the field this year. I would be very surprised if he doesn't get as many, if not more, carries as Kawan Lacey did last year as a freshman this year. So on the whole, I'm definitely buying the running backs. What do you think?
So I think your level. So I'll start. I'm buying the running backs as well. I also am a big believer in Ahmad Hardy. I think I would reach your level of enthusiasm next year. I think that 1 year to adjust for both Hardy and Davis is it's kind of what's holding me back from being like all in. I'm buying everything on this group, but I am still really optimistic about Hardy. I think Jamal Roberts is a really good back to have as your number 2 guy, your power guy. The staff seems to really like Brendan Haygood as well. I think the strength of this unit is more in its depth than maybe the QB room, where I was like, I'm really high on Pribula and not really sure about anything else. I do think that there are a lot of really good options for the staff to turn to this year, and that's assuming that Hardy isn't as good as he was even last year when he was really, really good. I think he translates up well. So I think the running back room is really strong. And I agree with you. The ceiling a few years out is really, really high.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could see Hardy, Roberts, Davis, maybe in 3 years, Haygood, all of those guys being really, really good SEC running backs. I mean, I think Hardy's going to be a really good SEC running back this year, and he's only a sophomore, and Roberts is only a junior, and Davis and Haygood as freshmen. So this room has a lot of growth to do, and hopefully, if they all stay on the Tigers moving forward into the future, they'll have a really good room even in 2026, 27 as well. Wide receivers. The wide receiver room loses Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Courtney Crutchfield, Mookie Cooper, Mekhi Miller. Those are the big names that went out the door. They're keeping Josh Manning, Speedy Johnson, James Madison, Daniel Blood, and then gaining Kevin Coleman, Xavier Lloyd, Donovan Olubade, Sean Terry, and Demarion Folks. This room saw a lot of turnover, a lot of high-end turnover when we're talking about Theo Weiss and Luther Burden for sure, but they also brought in a whole lot of new exciting faces. What do you think about the wide receiver room?
So I do think this is the point where it needs to be said that for anybody listening who's like taking this personally as like I like this player, I don't like this player, as the buy or sell thing. It's not pejorative. I think my Mizzou fan believes that the Mizzou fan in me believes that every one of these players is going to succeed. Mizzou's going to have a great year. They're going to go to the college football playoff. The receivers are going to be back and even better than they were last year. I think on the like when you look at the fact that you're losing your top 2 and nominally your top 3 receivers, if you count Mookie Cooper, even though Speedy Johnson was probably the 3rd best receiver on Mizzou's team last year, that's a lot to make up for. There's a lot of talent in this room. Kevin Coleman was a great pickup in the transfer portal. I'm probably the biggest fan of Joshua Manning out there, and it's not just because we share the same first name. Donovan Olubode is great. James Madison. There's a lot of really good young talent here. I just don't know, with a new quarterback coming in and basically a remade top 3, how that's going to translate well. Do I think that means that they're going to have a bad year? Not necessarily, but I think from the height of what Mizzou was capable of as recently as last year with guys like Burden and Weiss and Johnson, when you're looking at Marquise Johnson as like your like 4th best receiver when everyone's available, that's a really strong room. And I just don't know. I am having a hard time envisioning a world where expecting them to be that good this year is really fair. So I'm selling the wide receiver room. Maybe this year, I think long term, I'm buying some long term stocks, so I'm selling short term.
Sure. Well, this is our first big disagreement. Then that's awesome. I'm buying this unit. I think the combination of the young talent, and I think there's no denying, as you said it yourself, the talent of the young players, the freshmen, the sophomores. I guess even I guess the juniors aren't young anymore, but your Josh Mannings, your Speedy Johnsons, tons of talent there. Plus adding the experienced vets, bringing in Kevin Coleman, Xavier Lloyd could kind of to be those senior presence to lead the room. I think, and I kind of looked at this more as a position independent, so not necessarily thinking who's throwing the ball. And I probably should have thought about that a little bit harder. But just looking at the wide receivers themselves, I think this combination is actually going to work really well, because talking about who they lost, Luther Burden, Theo East, really, really good NFL caliber receivers. They were good, actually, too good in the sense that defenses keyed, especially on Luther, the entire season. This is the guy we have to take away. That we saw that in terms of his decreased production, because he was the first, second, and third priority for every team that Mizzou played, was to keep tabs of him at all times. The fact that they don't have that one guy that is going to get completely locked down, but thus the offense feels obligated to force the ball to as well, or look for as much as possible. I think that's going to ultimately help this team and help this unit as a whole. I think I also am counting on a big step forward that Marquise Johnson is making. The game he had against Iowa was far and away the most positively surprising game I think I can remember any Mizzou receiver having, just in terms of, wow, he is doing everything on the field that you want a wide receiver to do. He's running every route. He's going deep. He got the deep ball, which we know he can do. He was running slants. He was catching, crossers and, fades, and he was all over the field running it all. I think he's going to step up and really step into the shoes as the number one guy on the outside for this team moving forward. And then Kevin Coleman's going to slot in, and he's going to be a different type of slot receiver. Not a catch the ball and make guys miss via tackle, but more catch the ball and make guys miss with his moves. He's gonna have a great year. Then Josh Manning on the outside. Xavier Lloyd's gonna find a spot on here as well. I think this, because there's not pressure to force feed the ball to guys or to find ways to get specific guys touches. And this is no shot at any guy who is leaving. This is more just from the unit and from the quarterback's perspective. I think it's going to allow them all to play really well. I don't think any one player is going to have 1,000 or 1,200 receiving yards in the season, but I think if they all have 7, I think we could have multiple 700-800 yard receivers. I think Speedy Johnson can get 700-800 yards. I think Kevin Coleman's a shoe-in for that many at least as well. I think Josh Manning, if he gets a few more touches, can get several hundred yards, 700-800 yards as well. So if they can get 3 guys in that area, that's automatically going to be a huge step up from what they produced last year.
Great. We love this agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to tight ends. Talked a little bit about the tight end position earlier, but the Tigers lose Tyler Stevens. Whit Hafer isn't really a loss except that he changed positions. He's no longer a tight end. He's now in the offensive line position group. They're keeping Brett Northfleet, keeping Jordan Harris, keeping Jude James, gaining Vince Brown, Gavin Hoffman, and Dakota Terrell. So we talked a little bit about tight ends already. It's really not – it's a position that has been very underutilized, in my opinion, based not only on just running an effective offense, but also the talent that they've had on the field, specifically with Brett Northfleet, but with other guys as well. They just don't seem to figure out a good way to get these guys involved. So for that reason, not because of the talent on the field, but more how they're used, I'm going to hold on the tight end position. If we can come out and see in the first few games of the season, if they can use Brett Northfleet, use Jordan Harris in more effective ways, then I'm gonna start buying, because I really like the talent on the field. I just don't know if they're going to be used effectively.
Yeah, I think for me, this position group comes down to is Northfleet finally going to play healthy? Right, it just always feels like he's playing through something, or he's nursing a shoulder injury that's kind of affecting his his kind of top end strength and athleticism. So I'm also going to hold. I think that if you can get a healthy Norfleet out there and that you can keep him healthy throughout the year with the addition of Vince Brown, who I think it probably isn't going to isn't raising the ceiling of the team by any means, but gives you a good veteran presence, gives you the ability to maybe get some short possession range catches on the field. I think they can be effective, but I think until we see a guy really take off with that position, it's going to be kind of like a holding pattern. So I'll also hold.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Offensive line. Big long list of folks here. They're losing, most notably Armand Mimbu, first round draft pick, Cameron Johnson as well, Marcus Bryant, Drake Heismeyer. So that's four, at least by the end of the year, four starters all off the offensive line that are gone. They're keeping Connor Tollison, Logan Reichert, Caden Green, Tristan Wilson, Javen Richardson, and a few other guys. They're gaining Keegan Trost, Jalen Early, Dominic Gadice, Johnny Williams, Jack Lang, Henry Fanuku. So some interesting transfers coming in. Johnny Williams, the fourth, Dominic Gadice, then some really talented freshmen that I'm very excited about down the road. The problem is I don't think those talented freshmen are going to be able to find the field this year. And I also think the fact that they're losing 3 to 4 starters, we'll call it 3 because Tollison's back, but because Tollison was injured last year, we're not really sure how long it's going to take him to get back up to full speed. So for the fact that they lost all those talented players, the guys I brought in are interesting, but not necessarily, in my opinion, the same level of talent as a Armand Nimbu or a Marcus Bryant. I'm going to have to sell the offensive line. I'm worried that this is going to be the part of the offense, the weak link, if you will, that's going to limit to a degree what they're able to accomplish. What do you think?
Great. Let's disagree again. I'm buying the offensive line this year. I think so. I think when you look at it, obviously losing Armand Membu is a huge loss. He's kind of an irreplaceable guy, right? Anytime you have an offensive lineman, especially at a place like Mizzou, go top 10, you're not replacing him in 1 year. It's probably going to be another 5 to 10 years before you see another guy of that caliber come through. That being said, I think Caden Green is another guy, maybe not top 10 level, but I think if he puts it together, he's a first round NFL pick type of player. I think Connor Tollison really struggled last year, and I think he's a lot better than what he showed. I think injury had something to do with it. I think maybe coming into the year, I think there was some kind of low level NFL talk for him, and I don't know if it got in his head, but I think he's a much better player than he showed last year, and I'm expecting a bounce back year for him. He's a veteran in the program. He should show a lot. And I actually really like what the staff did with the transfer portal this year. The number one thing with offensive line is always continuity, right? So they've got that working against them, but they brought in a lot of players that I think are really interesting fits. They've got 2 guys that could potentially play left tackle. And I'm not even counting Caden Green there. I know that was kind of the idea, is that he would come in and he'd be able to play that position. But Johnny Williams, the fourth, has played there. Jalen Early has played there. So you've got options there. And I think especially Johnny Williams, the fourth, is young and exciting and has a lot of potential that he can grow into. I think Dominic Gadice has a lot of high-level experience at a winning program. So even if he's not going to be a starter for you, he's a guy that can give you good rotational snaps. I think they have a few players on the roster that are kind of bound to pop at some point. I know I keep using the word pop, but Logan Reichert is a guy that we've been kind of waiting to show up. And I think at some point he might show you a little bit more of what he's capable of. Javen Richardson is another guy in that mold. Keegan Trost is another graduate that they brought in. So I think the balance of the pieces that they brought in, there's enough depth because they really attacked that position and they really brought in a lot, that I think that they have enough to be able to develop a formula that is maybe not as high level as it was last year. And again, it's just going to be kind of impossible to replicate that with 2 NFL draft picks leaving and another potential NFL player, maybe if he gets through on an undrafted free agent deal. I think this group has a chance to be better than what we might expect. I think going into the offseason, I was like, I don't know, this seems like not great, but I think I've been really pleasantly surprised by how the staff has approached putting players in this position. So I'm going to buy.
I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. Offensive line is the number one position that you have to be at least competent at, if not excel at, if you're going to have success. Certainly in the SEC, but really in any level of college football or football in general. If you're weak on the line, it's not going to work. So hopefully you're the one that is right to sell or to buy there for sure. Staying in the trenches, but flipping over to the other side, we're going to talk about defensive tackles now. Um, the team loses Christian Williams, the longtime senior leader, to graduation. They're keeping Chris McClellan, Sterling Webb, Marquise Gracial, Jalen Marshall, Sam Williams. Gained Braylon Henderson, Jason Dowell as well, freshman coming in. Are you buying or selling defensive tackles?
I am. It's really hard because Chris McClellan alone the explosiveness that he brings to the interior of the line is almost like they're going to be effective if they can at least find someone that can not get teams to just focus on him. I think I'm going to hold on this because when I look at this group, you have Chris McClellan at the top of the list that it's like, yes, he's going to be successful. He's going to show out on the field. Can they find a suitable partner for him on the interior? Sterling Webb is good. I don't know that he's quite up to that level. We've been waiting kind of the same way with Logan Reichert. We've been waiting for Marquise Gracial to really show kind of the potential that he had when he was brought into the program. I'm going to hold. I really like, obviously, Chris McClellan. I'm a big fan of, but until someone shows that that there can be another guy that's gonna not just let the interior of lines focus on McClellan, I'm not exactly sure I can say that I'm buying that group outright.
Sure. Yeah, I'm also a little pessimistic on this side of the ball as well. And Chris McClellan, Sterling Webb, as you mentioned, both of those guys, especially McClellan, really good player. If we had 3 Chris McClellans on the defensive line, I would be buying every possible bit of stock I could on the defensive tackle position. Unfortunately, there's just one of them. Sterling Webb is a fine member to the rotation. But unfortunately, I'm just not seeing much after that I can really be confident about. And defensive tackle is a position where you've got to have 4 dependable guys that you can rotate in, because that's not a position you can play 70 snaps in a game at. You've got to have multiple waves of guys you can bring in there. Just to spell, because you're going to get worn down, and by the time it's halfway through the fourth quarter, if Chris McClellan's on the field for 60 snaps, he's going to get tired, and it's just he's going to get blocked, and they're going to start running the ball right down the middle. And I'm just not seeing who else on this roster is going to be that third and fourth guy. We've been waiting for Marquise Gracial or Jason Marshall or somebody to step up. Haven't seen it. We're going now on year 3 of hoping, and at this point, hoping is a little. I've kind of lost a little bit of hope. So I hope I'm wrong, because it's really important. This defense could be really good if they were just competent at the defensive tackle position. So I hope they find somebody. I hope they can find at least a third guy to fill in there. But for now, I'm going to have to sell just because I just don't see the depth. And they lost Al Davis, their coach, doesn't help at all. So hopefully they'll be able to get the house in order from that perspective as well. We've got a defensive end. Now, this is a little different tenor of conversation, in my opinion. They're losing Williams Nwaneri, Johnny Walker Jr., Joe Moore, Ja'Kai Lang, Jalen Brown, Eddie Kelly. That's a lot of names that they're losing. Keeping Zion Young and Darius Smith. And really, in a way, they're kind of gaining Darius Smith because he missed the entire season with an injury. Gaining David Wilson, Langdon Kitchen, Javion Hilson, Dayton Hopkins. Now, the edge I am buying, and I am buying as much as I could possibly get. I think that this is the most talented defensive end group as a whole in at least a decade that this team has had. And that's crazy to say, considering they're losing a 5-star recruit in Williams Nwaneri, losing a very, very solid player in Johnny Walker Jr., losing another 4-star in Jalen Brown, and yet they've gained in their talent overall, in my opinion. I could not be buying more. I think Damon Wilson's going to have a monster year. I think Darius Smith, once he can finally get on the field, is going to have a monster year. Zion Young is really solid. Javion Hilson, the freshman, is going to find his way on the field. and I think he's going to play way more and way more effectively than Williams Nwaneri did last year. I think he's just much more far along in his development at this point than some of the freshmen last year were.
Yeah, I mean, no disagreement from me here. The level of talent at this position is kind of staggering when you look at it. When you look at potentially the two most talented players on the defensive side of the football for Mizzou, are guys that you're bringing in this year, both Georgia transplants, Smith and Wilson. The edges are going to get at it this year, and I agree with you on Hilson as well. I think losing Nwaneri wasn't great, but I think replacing him with a guy that probably he can't be honestly less effective than Nwaneri was last year, and he's a year younger. I think Mizzou did a really good job bringing him in. He's a guy a lot of schools wanted, so that was a really great recruiting win for them at the end of the year. And you return Zion Young, who is a guy that when I was looking at early mock drafts for next year, a lot of people like him as like a mid-round type of guy. So he's got a lot to prove in terms of that's something he can live up to. So I think there's a lot of good talent. There's a lot of veteran talent on the end. So I'm with you. I'm buying a lot.
Absolutely. Another position that I will just go ahead and rip out the Band-Aid I'm buying a lot as well, is the linebacker position. This position loses Chuck Hicks and Corey Flagg. Brayshawn Littlejohn transferred out as well. They're keeping our JUCO star Tristan Newsom, who's able to stick around for, I think this will be his 6th year in college. Thankfully, we get to keep him. Brian Huff comes back. Jeremiah Beasley, Nick Rodriguez, Khalil Jacobs also comes back, and will hopefully be healthy after missing half the season with an injury last year. They're gaining Josiah Trotter, Dante McClellan, and Jason King. I think this group is an amazing mix of really talented players and experience. In the case of Josiah Trotter, he's got both. I mean, this is a guy with NFL pedigree. As a freshman, he had like 90 tackles last year for West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
He was the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. I think it's way just on a SEC or national level, the fact that Mizzou landed this guy was way underreported in terms of how big of a deal that he is, how good of a player he is. And he's coming in with ostensibly 3 years of eligibility, but I think he's good enough that we'll see him for 2, and then he'll move on to bigger and better things. The experience that Tristan Newsom brings, this will be now his 3rd year with significant playing time at Mizzou. Khalil Jacobs was havoc inducer galore when he was able to play before he got hurt, getting him back and hopefully healthy the whole year. And then it sounds like from the spring, one of the players that showed out the most across the entire roster was Nick Rodriguez. He was one of the guys that Drinkwitz was just singing his praises over and over again about how good he is and has become. And so there's going to be a lot of competition for playing time among all these guys, because there's a lot of talent on this in this group, and I think they're all going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm also buying the linebacker group. I think that when you got Newsom back, I think that was the capper right there. I was already pretty optimistic about this group with Jacobs returning, bringing in Trotter, who I agree. I think sneakily might have been. I mean, it's kind of hard to outdo Damon Wilson, but was definitely the sneak pick for the best addition to this team this year. Or this offseason. Nick Rodriguez, like you said, has been a favorite of the staff. I'm still intrigued by the potential of Jeremiah Beasley, even though there's nothing really to go off of. Former blue chipper coming from Michigan. But yeah, there's a lot of depth, a lot of proven talent on this side of the ball. So even if we're not as confident in the defensive tackles, at least we know we're confident in the group that's going to be sitting behind them. So yeah, I'll buy linebackers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like Beasley too. He, along with Rodriguez, did see the field as a freshman last year, so it's obvious that the coaches like him and are trusting him to get on the field. It's gonna be really interesting to see who's getting what snaps. And to be honest, as much as great as Tristan Newsom is in terms of his experience on the field, I could see some of these young guys starting to steal snaps just because their ultimate ceiling, maybe a little bit higher down the road, and they want to get those guys more playing time. So it'll be fun to watch those guys play. Cornerbacks, losing the cornerbacks lost Marcus Clark, Jamarian Wayne, and Jaron Sensabaugh. Kept Toriano Pride, Drayden Norwood, Nick Deloach, Shamar McNeil, Cameron Keys, gained Stephen Hall, and freshman Mark Manfred. What are you thinking about the cornerbacks?
I am going to say this with the hope that some of our friends in the cornerback room are listening, or at least maybe this gets aggregated and someone points it out to them. I'm selling the cornerback room this year, mostly because I kind of don't see a translatable ceiling to a high end SEC, the exterior of the secondary, right? So Toriano Pride, obviously a really flashy player, has the ability to make some game breaking plays, a lot of athleticism. Didn't really have the strongest first year in the program. You would hope that's a little bit more continuity is going to help him out there. But kind of hasn't realized a lot of that potential that he had coming out of high school. Drayden Norwood, I kind of don't know what to think. He had a really good first year in the program, struggled a little bit last year. He's a good player, but I think maybe without an Ennis Rakestraw next to him, he was maybe a little exposed, or Ennis Rakestraw or Chris Abrams-Drain. He wasn't able to capitalize as much on that. So getting more of the field maybe was a little bit detrimental to his overall outlook. There's a lot of guys that I think could be really good corners. Cam Keys, Shamar McNeil are guys that I think we liked a lot coming out of high school. Obviously, the addition of Stephen Hall is an exciting one, but again, moving to the SEC from Washington State, you don't know how much that's going to translate. I think this is a group. I think out of all the positions on the defense, this is the one that has the lowest ceiling, and a one that I think will get targeted a lot on the outside of the field. So I'm selling the cornerback group. Again, I know that slided cornerbacks love to get their heckles up. So please prove me wrong, guys.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. It was, well, I hesitate to say the weakest on the team last year. Certainly the whole secondary was struggled quite a bit last year, but this was the position that added the least, just in terms of total number of new faces overall. And they did get transfer Stephen Hall, who will see the field. He should be a fine player. Drayden Norwood is a good player. He's actually a very good player, I think, and he would be an excellent second cornerback. If you next to an Ennis Rakestraw, who's a second round draft pick type of player, he's really, really good. But if he's your best guy, and then you're relying on someone else to come up and be your second best guy, that's where I think you're falling a little bit short. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that if Toriano gets improved, these guys can improve. So if Toriano improves, if Nick DeLoach, I think he's the guy that might actually we could see improving the most. He kind of came out of nowhere last year to start several games, and prior to the summer camp, no one had barely remembered that he was even on the roster. Oh, he was kind of and also ran, and all of a sudden, whoa, this kid's gonna play. And then he played a lot. Then he played, he had his ups and downs, but he's a young player. He could get better if he significantly improves to the point where he's close to matching what Norwood's putting on the field. This unit could be okay. They could get by. But I think on the whole, this is probably the weakest unit on the defense for sure, and that's why I'm selling.
Yeah, at least on like proven top end talent at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to our last position, safeties, and this is the reason. And I'm just going to go out there and say it right now. This is the reason why I'm not super, even though I'm selling on the cornerbacks, I'm not super worried about the Tiger defense as a whole. That's because this might be the best safety room in the country, or at least the SEC. I am so excited about all the guys that got in this room, especially. We'll get to that. Let's start at the beginning. They're losing Joseph Charleston, Sidney Williams, Trevez Johnson, all to graduation, keeping Marvin Burks, Dalen Carnell, Caleb Flagg, Jackson Hancock, gaining Mose Phillips, Santana Beans Banner, and Jalen Catalon. Jalen Catalon, had he been healthy for 3 years, would have been a first-round draft pick 3 years ago. This kid is that talented. He's that good. He's that experienced. He's really, really good. So getting him on the field automatically makes this defense 10 times better, regardless of who else is on the field. This guy is a game changer for Mizzou. Hopefully he can stay healthy all year. And if he does, and he's as productive as he was last year, he will be drafted next year. But him being on the field is a huge game changer for this whole defense. Then we've got, of course, Dalen Carnell, stud, going to be drafted, great player. Marvin Burks, he had kind of a shaky first season as a starter last year. I expect him to get better. I think he will grow. He will get better. Then Santana Banner, Mose Phillips, those guys are great depth pieces. They'll see the field at some point here and there as well. Really excited about this room, and I think there's a lot that they can do, and a lot that Jacob Yoro, the safeties coach, and Corey Batoon can do to help them mitigate perhaps some of the weakness on the outside with the number of really talented players on the back end.
Yeah, I wish there was a little more friction toward the end of this podcast and we were able to disagree, but no, it's kind of like the defensive end. You look at the talent in the safety room and you kind of have to be excited about what you're seeing. Even without Jalen Catalon, I was excited when, Dalen Carlisle said he was going to come back, and you've got Marvin Burks, who I agree with you. I think making that step up to the second year as like a really heavily rotational player, if not a starter. And he's a junior this year. So that's when you're going to see a lot of improvement come out of these guys. Getting guys like Mose Phillips and Santana Banner, who are going to be your depth pieces. Those are guys that were productive at the level they were at. So you're automatically adding kind of like a really comfortable foundation to this group. And then you go out and get a guy like Jalen Catalon. To be honest, I remember when the day that they announced that he was committing, I was like that Jalen Cat. I kind of have one of those reactions where you're like, is that a more common name than I realized? But no, I had almost like forgotten just because he was playing, with Barry Odom at UNLV. But no, what an absolutely outstanding get that I really think takes this group, like you said, I think it takes it from like a pretty good safety room to potentially the best in the SEC. That's how good Jalen Catalon is. So when you start with Jalen Catalon and Dalen Carnell, you're already looking at like high-end NFL level talent that I think will definitely give the cornerbacks a little bit of room to breathe. And especially with a guy like Catalon, who's a ball hawk in the back, that gives the secondary a little bit of coverage, as it were.
Yeah, and add that in with how excited we are about the defensive ends. The fact that the pass rush for this defense, I think, will be significantly better than what it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Going to decrease the amount of time that the cornerbacks are going to have to cover, and then give them protection on the back end. I think that's going, and then let the linebackers kind of clean everything up in the middle. I think this defense, despite some misgivings I might have at the front end and on the edges, I think could be a really, really good defense overall.
Yeah, well, I think the potential is there with the weaker groups, right? So, like like we talked about with defensive tackle, you've got Chris McClone, so you really just need a few other guys to step up and prove that they can be dependable contributors. And with the cornerbacks, you have guys that could be good, and we know are like good on that 2 to 4 level in terms of, but we need a guy to step up and be a number 1, which there is the talent to do that. You just need the consistency. And then when you look at defensive ends and safeties, you're looking at 2 of the better rooms in the SEC, which makes them 2 of the better rooms in the country. So the high end talent is there. It's just a few pieces that need to step up, and then you're looking at one of the best defenses in the country.
Absolutely. Well, we can only hope. We're now just 2.5 short months away from the start of the season, really, and 2 months away from the start of fall camp. So it's approaching slowly, but we're getting there. We are slowly getting there. That about does it for today. Josh, thanks so much for filling in for Nate today. Anything else? Any other thoughts you have for the people before we sign off?
Yes, buying Blake Craig, holding on Connor Wesselman. Those are my final thoughts.
Right. I'm with you. I neglectfully forgot the most important unit on the team, and that's the special teams unit. What about long snapper? Do we have a thought?
I'm buying him too.
Okay, what Mr. Long Snapper? What's his name? But we're both buying him as well. Great. Well,
send me an NIL jersey and I'll wear it. I'll wear it on the next podcast.
That would be great. That would be awesome. Well, thanks again, Josh, for joining us. We'll check back here in a couple weeks, barring any big breaking news before then. But until then, you can follow the show at Rock Game Radio. Follow me at Burstahurst. And Josh, where can the good folks find your work?
I am obviously on Rock M Nation and Rock M Plus. I am on Blue Sky at Josh Magica at bsky.com. I'm no longer on erstwhile Twitter. But yeah, I'm tweeting about Mizzou, or I guess I'm skeeting about Mizzou stuff over on Blue Sky these days. So you can follow me there. but I'm mostly on the Rock M platforms.
Well, check him out. Check out my work, his work, everyone's work on rockmnation.com, rockm plus. And until next time, MIZ.
ZOU.